Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Talkin' Tunes. I am your host, Frank Walsh. And in keeping with the tradition of trying to provide you with great entertainment, I have a guest here today who is certainly going to live up to that billing. He is a man who is recognized all over the East Coast as one of the preeminent harmonica players. His stage presence, his unique style is one to be admired. He has played with many of the greats whom he will talk about today. He is a man who has his own style, and he can twist and turn that harmonica and make it talk. He is an individual who started out way back when as a rock and roll drummer who had the pleasure of playing with the fifth Beatle, Peter Best. But he has since taken on the harmonica, and boy, are we glad that he did. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the undaunted Professor Harp.
No, pleasure being here, Frank.
Welcome aboard. Nice to see you here.
Much obliged.
It took a while for you to get on here. We've been working on this for a while, but I'm telling you, I am glad that you're here today.
Well, I promised I'd be here.
And you certainly lived up to that promise. But can you live up to that introduction? I tell you, you know.
I just try like hell.
You do.
That's all I can do.
Now, why don't you take a couple of seconds and look into that camera right over there and let the folks at home know a little bit about the undaunted Professor Harp.
Well, the best thing I like to say is I try to play the blues and rock and roll and some soul to the best of my ability anyway, you know. I like to see you folks out here, and I'm going to show you a little bit, folks who may not know me, you know, how I do it, and you decide, basically. You know, so, but basically, I'm trying to do my part to keep the blues alive. And, you know, that's no easy undertaking nowadays.
Well, I know, Hugh, that you have played in many, many different venues, and I have seen you play many times. And as I said in my introduction, you are certainly one to go out and see. So why don't you let the folks at home know some of the places where you do play?
Well, you're liable to see me all over New England. Sometimes I play down in Rhode Island, a place called the Narragansett Cafe.
Yep.
Sometimes you might see me at a place in Quincy called Pete's Lounge once in a while. You might see me there. You might see me at a place in Hyde Park called Fairmount Grill every so often. I do that, you know. Basically, I try to go everywhere I can go. Theodore's in Springfield. They kind of like me there, so I get out there every few months and try to play the devil's music there, too.
Now, I know that you've mentioned some small venues here, but you have played some of the big halls as well, and you also get out there and play in a lot of festivals. And I know you played over at the legendary Johnny D's, which is going to be closing fairly soon. And you're all over the place.
Well, you have to be nowadays.
Uh-huh.
Because it's not that much work out there, so you have to go where the work is. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you just have to, you know, go, you know, wherever they pay you, you know, you'll play, basically.
Now, what do you think the state of blues music is these days? You know, how would you compare and contrast some of the differences of you playing back in the heyday when blues was extremely popular all over the country, and it seems to have kind of waned a little bit with rock and roll, et cetera, over the years. How would you compare and contrast?
Well, with rock.
Yeah.
Not so much rock and roll, rock.
Okay, but rock. But how would you compare and contrast, you know, the times of the past to where the blues has evolved today?
Well, today, I don't know. I think, you know, it's not really in that good of a shape. Mm-hmm. I think it can be turned around, but a lot of trends have to change in order to do that. Mm-hmm. Now, I believe it has to be more mainstreamed. I believe, and I've complained about this for many a year, like many decades, over 40 years, over 40 years. I believe it's black music, but I think a lot of the black community has to reappreciate it, so to speak. Mm-hmm. we've been sold a bill of goods about the blues being irrelevant nowadays and old-time music, and it reminds me of the bad days. But you look at what's going on today, a lot of the bad things are still happening, only more sophisticated, that's all. Mm-hmm. So I believe a lot has to change that way. You have to have more black support. You have to have more mainstreaming. I believe black musicians shouldn't be marginalized in the blues because we originated. Mm-hmm. And you see that a lot all over the country, And I'm not the only one saying it. Mm-hmm. I've heard about it, like in Dominican University, they had a symposium with a lot of the heavier guys than I have, and guys and girls that are out there, like, Sugar Blue, Billy Branch, they're all saying the same thing. Got to get rid of that marginalization. Mm-hmm. And also, I think that a lot of young kids need to really appreciate the music, not just go to a jam session and just play some blues songs and play it loud. There's a lot more to it than that. Mm-hmm. You've got to be able to really have a love for the music. You got to know where it came from, and you have to really relate to it very much, in order to do it. I mean, you don't have to, act like you lived in a shack in Mississippi. No, not necessarily to do that, but you have to have an empathy, I would say. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've had some great musicians on the show who have played the blues over the last several months, and many of them echo your same sentiments. Who would you say is out there now in the blues scene who is truly living up to the message that you just delivered, who are playing, good blues rather than just calling it blues? They are actually playing it. Who are some of the people that you listen to?
Well, I'm trying to listen to a lot of the younger brothers and sisters for that matter, who play. I had the pleasure of meeting a gentleman from Chicago by the name of Omar Coleman, blues harmonica player, and he's good. Mm-hmm. I like to learn to pick up some things of him. Mm-hmm. And there's another gentleman from St. Louis by the name of Marquis Knox. He's good, playing guitar. I think he's a double threat man. I think he plays a little harmonica too. Mm-hmm. Let's see.
What about some of the local folks, like, you get, Sugar Ray, the Blue Tones, Anthony Gerasi, and, Ricky King Russell, and, those guys have really been preeminent in the field as well. And I know that you've played with these guys.
Yeah, I have. Then there's the old elder statesmen like Shorty Billups.
Yes. Short Hay has been on the show.
He's still going strong. Cat's all 80-odd years old, and he's still going strong.
I know. He really has something. But I know that, we could sit here and talk about music, but I think it might be time if our esteemed director, Mr. Dave Young, who is substituting for Roxanne Morks today, we have a little clip of you. Roxanne. We have a little clip that we could play, and the people at home could see Professor Harp in action. So Dave, if you're ready, cue it up, my friend. Professor Harp, I tell you, that sounded like little Jimmy Reed to me. Why don't you talk a little about that, maybe the boys you're playing with?
Well, yeah. Well, see, my style is minimalist. And I got hip to that back in the mid-'70s, like when the Fabulous Thunderbirds came up. They knocked me out because they were a four-piece band, and they got such a big sound. You know, I think they supercharged what the old black guys did down in Texas and Louisiana, and that's all you need. So that's the way I really like to play. Now that song happened to be an original. The words were, you know, the melodies in the public domain, of course.
Yep.
But, you know, that's an original. The lyrics are. But that's the way I like to really roll. You know, small, get a big sound of a small band. You know, 'cause that's one of the hardest things that you can do. You know,
Well, you certainly make that harmonica talk. So let's talk a little bit
I just
about,
try.
and you do a heck of a job. Let's talk a little bit about a certain nightclub back in the day when you were just Hugh Holmes and started playing, and talk a little bit about how you got your name, Professor Harp.
Well, it was a place in Dorchester on Washington Street called the 323, a black club. And Solomon Burke was playing there. So I had this big old amp. I went down there. I always wanted to meet him because it was an R&B icon.
Yep.
You know, and brought it in, introduced myself. So he invited me to sit in. So brought my amplifier in. Big old Fender Twin. Reverb, which really isn't a good hop amp, but just be that as it may. So
Yep.
we were playing CC Rider, and you know, you liked it. So afterwards, we went backstage, and I introduced myself. And I already introduced myself, but I explained that I had lived in Boston, and we're going back over 25 years at least. Well, you know, I'd say over 35 years now. Damn, time is gone.
Time is flying.
And I used to wear gold rim glasses. So he started calling me Professor Harmonica Holmes, you know, 'cause I was born in Boston. So I just cut it to Professor Harp.
And talk a little bit about your experience with Muddy Waters, too. You and he crossed paths a little bit, too.
Well, I always, you know, pleasantly call that when I lost my blues virginity. You see, because basically, all I had been doing was trying to jam around with these bands that try to play blues. You know, these rock bands that try to play blues. And I wasn't really happy, you know, because I wasn't really learning anything. And I just happened to meet a guy who, to this day, we're still good friends. And he had lived in my old neighborhood, but he was dating a woman in this area. So one night, I met this cat in a bar, and I was finishing working in a warehouse and stopped off for a beer after work. And I was talking, I said, look, I'd rather be playing a blues band. And it turned out he knew Muddy Waters. So we got pretty tight, and it turned out he lived in my old neighborhood anyway, so he'd invite me to go and see Muddy. When Muddy would come to Boston, he'd play a week, and he'd play a matinee at the late, great Paul's Mall.
Paul's Mall, sure.
So he introduced me to Muddy, and Muddy had his, you know, one of the best bands he had then. He had Bob Margolin playing guitar, Luther Guitar Jr. Johnson on guitar, Pine Top Perkins on piano, Willie Smith on drums, Calvin Jones on bass. Jerry Portnoy had just joined the band after Paul Osher. And it was a hit band. So my friend Paul, a guy named Paul Dion, introduced me to Muddy and said, yeah, hey, this is Hugh. He's going to play harp for you. Muddy didn't say anything. So a few minutes later, I went out to see the show when Muddy came on and everything, and I'm grooving, enjoying the music. And about maybe, I would say, well into the set, he goes up, where's the harp player? He pointed at me, come on up stage. So naturally I had the nervousness and I overcame that. Somehow I had a bag of unorganized harmonicas.
I understood that. It was all unorganized and you
but
were
I grabbed the right one. I wasn't fumbling, that's the whole thing.
But you were...
I wasn't fumbling. You know, it's almost like some kind of thing like divine intervention or something. You know, just grab the right harmonica.
The blues god smiled on you that moment.
Switch mics, all in super speed. And the next thing you know, we're playing, and I had, with few mistakes. I had a few screw ups there, but with few mistakes. And, what better way to do it than with a master like that?
Cool. Very cool. Very cool.
And that's true. And every time he'd come to Boston, he always invite me to play. And the knowledge I gained from that is priceless.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to play with a legend like that. But as you can see, time is moving along very quickly. And I know that you have a harmonica or two down there. So why don't we let that blues god intervention shine down again, and you pick up that harmonica and
well, I'll do a little bit of this because I'm known to use this and use an organ effect.
Yeah, give us about 3.5 minutes of what you're going to play. What are you going to play for us?
Well, I like to do this old George Gershwin number. I learned it from my biggest influence, a gentleman by the name of George Harmonica Smith, the late great. And I think folks would know it's called Summertime.
Let it go.
All right. came out just like a record.
Nicely done there, Mr. Professor. Nicely done. Well, I tell you, when you came on here, one of the disadvantages of the show is that it's only 30 minutes, and we are winding down pretty quickly. But why don't you let the folks at home know how they can learn more about you? You have a website,
yes,
you
I
have
do.
some CDs, and there is a lot of information out there. So why don't you tell the folks at home how they can get in touch with you, how people might want to book you, etc.
Yep. Well, go to www.professorharp.com and just, spell professor right, because you'd be surprised how many people don't know how to do that. Yep. So, one F in professor. All right. And www.professorharp.com. It's got story about me. It goes 99.999999% true. That's what I like to say all the time. Ways to get my CD. You could do that.
Yep.
And you can always join the mailing list as well.
Cool. Well, Hugh, I want to thank you very much for coming on today. It was a great pleasure. It was always enjoyable hearing you playing, but it's so nice to hear it up close and personal. And you're welcome to come back anytime.
I'm much obliged.
There are a lot more things we can talk about. We didn't have enough time, and I know that you have some very interesting stories to share. So, ladies and gentlemen at home, for Professor Harp, I am Frank Walsh. And don't forget to support your local musicians. Go out and see Hugh Holmes, Professor Harp, and until then, tune in and tune on.
Thank you, everybody at home.